Welcome, Carm Capriato, the Service Aftermarkets Podcast Pioneer, with the gold standard of aftermarket business podcasts. Join me for Aftermarket Insights as we advance the aftermarket. And as always, know that you'll learn just one thing. Find us on your favorite podcast listening app and remarkableresults.biz or on my YouTube channel. Hey, everybody. Carm Capriato, Remarkable Results Radio. Good to have you here. We're in the midst of winter out here in the Buff in December. Lots of snow where I live, and hopefully maybe you're listening somewhere on the island somewhere, sipping on a margarita with your feet in the sand, getting all warm. I'm jealous. Hey, thank you so much for your loyalty and hanging out with us and getting some of the best content that is produced for podcasts in the aftermarket. You come here for that. You know, I was thinking the other day about the younger people that we need to bring into our industry and also to share this content that we do here on the podcast with so many of our young people. Please, anybody who is a rising star in the industry, please share the remarkableresults.biz website and our podcast on all the podcast listening apps. And don't forget, please download your copy of The Rise, this entire important language shift that's going on inside of our industry, remarkableresults.biz/rise, R-I-S-E, the rise of the technology specialist in our industry. I'd like to introduce my incredible guest, David Boyd. Hello, David.
Hello, Carm.
Good to have you here. This guy is he's a phone guy. But I really don't want to call you a geek because I think you're even smarter than a geek.
Could be. Now you'll make me blush. But no, I appreciate being here. I've been a big fan of you for a long time. I just appreciate what you do for really raising the water level in the industry, Carm.
Well, thank you. I mean, you're obviously a partner with us on the podcast, callinbound.com, and we appreciate that partnership because you got a great story to tell. And so we're not here to do a commercial on callinbound.com. And if by any chance you decide to get it, that's a great thing. But what David has taught me over the last few months, I met David maybe a couple of years ago. We did an episode together, found out you're a pilot and you've got this incredible company called Inbound. I found out where, and again, there's a lot of people out there using AI to help, if you will, think, decide, navigate what's going on with the spoken word. I mean, you know, we're typing things in, it's giving us words back, but if we put in certain words, can it analyze or tell us some information? So we want to talk about in this episode the process of call handling, call reviews for service advisors. It's one of the most critical and most important. I have a friend of mine who called me up the other day and says, Carm, I just signed with David. And I said, have you seen that incredible dashboard? He says, we can't wait. So I'm excited to hear that there's a lot of turning on that's going on out there. And then ultimately the consistency in using this information to improve your company and to set the expectations for your people. So I'm not the expert in talking about this, but you are. And I want our industry to use this as a form of continuous education and not training, because training is football, training is sports, training is golf, you know, getting those muscle memory things going on. And we talk about training all the time in our industry, but again, a part of my language shift, David, is to move from the words training to the words continuous education, which is something we need to do so badly. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in,
right?
You know, whatever you do, if you blink for a minute, you've just lost a mile's worth of stuff you need to know.
It's a great analogy, Carm. There's so many industries. My wife's a nurse and she's been involved in continuing education for her entire career, whether it's medical or insurance or automotive repair, which is our industry. Continuing education is important. Our technicians are continuously learning, and in the front office, we need to do the same. Part of this process then becomes understanding what is happening in our communication with the customers. How are we anticipating their needs, addressing their needs? And we do this through, monitoring and evaluation of call handling.
Hey, are you going to the Institute Summit, February 2025? Well, if you want a top-tier event and destination, you found it. The Institute Summit. Connect with your peers, explore innovation, and increase your knowledge. Nothing like it. Speakers such as Dan Clark, Dr. Jessica Kriegel, Ross Bernstein, and some of our industry's top presenters and speakers will be there presenting and hanging out with you. There will also be lightning talks and time with exhibitors, February 6th through the 9th, 2025, at the beautiful Omni Resort, Amelia Island, Florida. Great time to be in Florida. wearetheinstitute.com/summit, February 6th through the 9th, 2025. I hope to see you there. When I saw your dashboard, I was just aghast by what it was telling me. And one of my big takeaways from it was, oh, let's take a look at the tire opportunities that you may have missed.
Right.
And again, I think the entire industry is got to get behind tires a whole lot more than they have been. And to me, if there was any revenue generator, but not necessarily, oh, I don't make a lot of money on tires, I'm not going to do tires. And my great friend owns a tire shop down the road, and he sends me all of his problem children. And I said, okay, all of that's wonderful. But did you ever hear the stat? If you don't do the person's tire, you have a great chance of losing them to a tire shop that's figuring out to do what you're doing.
Right.
Why aren't we stopping to do that? So what I saw there was the word opportunity.
Right. It is an opportunity. So we want to know in our independent automotive repair industry, what is leading people to my shop? How did I generate that interest in my shop? And then how did I handle that when it came in? Was there an opportunity that was missed? So
Yeah.
as an owner or manager, whoever is responsible for this part of development in my shop or my group of shops, what's important to understand about that customer call? Why were they calling us? How did they get to us in the first place? And then we want to go a little bit deeper in that conversation to know not just this one call. They call this one time for this one car they might not even care about. It might be my kid's car and I don't want to spend a lot of money on it, but hey, I might have my precious gem sitting in the garage that I haven't told you about. So we need to begin to develop this relationship. But it's important to handle those calls properly, have the key understanding of it goes more beyond somebody just saying, hey, I've got a problem with my car today.
What's fascinating to an owner is, and I'm going to use the word conversion rates.
Mm-hmm.
And you do such a great job of that on your dashboard. And for me to, even if I'm a multi-shop owner, I know your software handles all of that and the stores and all the opportunities there. But just to think about, am I converting?
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're listening to the calls, you're doing mystery shopping, it's awfully tough to know.
Right. It is hard. So, so much of this, I've told you before that, my background's in process engineering. So when I look at communication, I'm doing so through the lens of a process. Communication is a business process. It's really important from my seat, it's really important to know why is somebody calling? How do we handle this call? And what's my expectation as a business owner for managing the call flow? If I have that process understood, then I can establish an expectation of my team. I can evaluate on various performance metrics and look at things like conversion. So there are multiple factors that lead to conversion. What does conversion mean, and how do I explain that to my team? But just understanding that we start with an understanding of the call handling process and establishing that expectation, training and teaching, and then we continue that back to the continuing education. Consistency wins every time. Our consistency in the communication internally, when an owner is consistently establishing those expectations, reviewing the calls, that wins, because that's what now begins to raise the water level in the way that we're handling the incoming calls, right? And our interaction with customers. So if we lack on the consistency, now we begin to replace that with complacency. And that is going to be the worst part of trying to get back to at least normal operations.
Your word complacency just triggered a thought in my mind about
Mm-hmm.
the politeness that we need to have in representing the company, maybe my core basic communication style. And every once in a while we have a bad day,
Right.
or maybe the boss isn't around, or I just got beaten up by an issue and I don't quite answer the phone in the most proper way that I know that I'm really good at. Your software tells me about my polite factor at all?
It does. So we call that You've probably heard the term sentiment analysis, right?
Okay.
So when we begin to leverage AI, everybody's heard about AI. It's all we hear about anymore, right?
Yeah.
And that very, very quickly. But we utilize AI to evaluate empathy, tone. Collectively, we call that sentiment. So am I enthusiastic on the call? These are the cues that AI is picking up about ending, your conversation positive, right? So with that little uptick in the voice. Am I letting my customer hear me smile? I sound different when
I
I'm
love that.
physically smiling, right? And the AI helps us understand these
Yeah.
things and can help draw us into some of those advisor behaviors that they might be saying the right words, but the way they say them may be uninviting.
Yeah, I love that smile. I mean,
Mhm.
people can see your smile on the phone if you're smiling. It's
If you're smiling,
amazing.
yeah,
It is amazing. And I guess AI can pick that up, huh?
it can. So it evaluates the context and the tone, the not just the words spoken, but how they're spoken, and measures that against models that helps give us predictive indicators then that empathy is high, enthusiasm is high, these types of things, or low. And when we look at measuring calls, it's good to know what did happen, but also what didn't happen. And we can train the model to evaluate what went well, but maybe where were we lacking in certain areas on this particular call.
I love what you just said. Pretty heavy duty $50 couple of words here. Predictive predictive indicators.
Predictive indicators. I'll throw a few more of those little nuggets out there for you, Carm.
Oh, my mind's already heavy with all of these great words. Predictive indicators, is that like something to do with an algorithm? Something that you're looking for? You write a piece of software, it's all this fancy stuff, and you call it predictive indicators?
Yeah, predictive indicator. Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. So
Okay.
the idea of a predictive indicator is understanding based on past behavior, what's my future behavior, simply put.
Ah,
So this is the process part of what I do in understanding how can we learn from what somebody is doing today or what they have done to understand how they will behave, and then that guides our development.
okay. Here's what I want to know. I'm an owner who decides to do this and to look at this dashboard
Mhm.
and to recognize I haven't told my people anything about this yet. And it's now time to unveil this data because I'm seeing all the issues that I may have in how we're approaching the customer, the things that we do, the things that we say, the things that we're missing.
Right.
And I sit down with my people. And again, I'm trying to help me, coach me, walk me through this as an owner. How do I get this into my people's hands and let them see that this is a help, not a hindrance, that
Mhm.
this is a positive, not a negative?
Boy, you and I could have a whole episode on that question, that statement
Well,
that you
then
just
let's
made.
let's decide to do it, but
Okay.
give us the
So here
abridged version of this.
here's the
Yeah.
abridged version. This is important because once you move down this path, a number of things happen. First off is people need to listen to themselves on a call recording, and that's super uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
And you listen to yourself all the time. I listen to myself occasionally,
Yeah.
but when we sit down with our service advisors, something unique happens, which is I listen to myself in an audio recording, and that might be the first time that I've ever done anything like that. So I'm actually, as the participant in this review process, doing something that has now become extremely uncomfortable, which is listening to myself on a call recording. I sound different. I might be assessing like, oh, what is my boss thinking about me, or I don't like the way that I sound, or why did I say that, and now we begin to evaluate something that is just super uncomfortable. So I might not even be paying attention to how I did on that call because I'm so distracted by the way that I sound. So it's important to kind of, we don't have to coddle, but it is important to acknowledge that and then somewhat ease our way into it. So we want to sit down maybe the first time, explain what we're going to do. Hey, we're going to listen to, a call, and I'm just going to ask what you think of it. So let's listen to this call. What did you think of it? Great. Maybe we listen to 2 calls, and that's kind of it for the day. And then the next time we're going to talk about more of well on the call.
AAPEX 2024, one of the best industry training and expo events, is now in the record books. Joe's Garage at AAPEX brought the best and the brightest together to create an interactive experience like no other. The concentration on emerging technology was cutting edge, along with the latest in tools and equipment that bring efficiencies to your shop, which is another reason to attend AAPEX. There were more than 60 training sessions for technical, business management, and HR. You participated in the EV experience stage at Joe's Garage along with ADAS technology. If you did not attend, I bet you wished you had. AAPEX created specialty sections to make it super easy to find your area of interest, like the tire service section, tools and equipment, the diagnostics telematics shop, and of course the EV experience. New in 2024 was the student competition on an engine build, and features inside of Joe's Garage were from Autel, BG Products, NAPA, Hunter Engineering, Bosch, Repairify Coats, and Solid Start, among others. Mark your calendar for AAPEX 2025, November 4th through the 6th in Las Vegas. Listen here to learn about exciting events planned for 2025 and when you can start registering. Hey, let's face it. Your shop management system is the single most important tool in your shop, period. NAPA Trax has made selecting the right shop management system easy by offering the industry's best, most comprehensive SMS. Now, it all starts when a local representative meets with you to learn about your business and how you need to run it. After all, it's your shop, so it's your choice, and having local representation is a huge plus. Customizing tracks to your business, whether you're a one-person shop or a large multi-bay or multi-location company, a representative consults with you to help optimize your shop's workflow, efficiency, and profitability. Trax always has the flexibility to do business how you need to do it, which means it can also grow as your business grows. And unlike the other guys, we'll be there for you after installation with the best training and support in the business. Yes, a learning management system tailored to each role in your company. Simply put, Trax was designed and built for shop owners just like you. Visit us on the web at NAPATRACS, that's NAPATRACS.com. Hey, ever wonder how your labor rate compares to your market and state? You now have a site where you can confidentially upload your rate and see other labor rates published in your market. LaborRateTracker.com is an important site to know about. Currently, the database has over 1,000 shops participating and growing every day. But there's more to setting your rates than finding out what others charge. You should look at the labor rates in your state and town to gain a complete picture of the labor rate landscape. Hey, it's easy. Get market intelligence like never before at LaborRateTracker.com. I got an idea. Oh, first of all, let me confirm to you that people can't stand the sound of their own voice when it's recorded. But that's what we hear.
Yes.
That's what we hear. They don't hear it like that.
Right.
So I'm a professional when it comes to that. Number two, the transcript. Is it easier to go out? Because I know you guys do transcripts to say, hey, look here's a call from just the other day. You and I, why don't you read this, come back in the office, at 4:30. Let's talk about what you just read. Is that a way to start to get into the listening curve?
It is. That does help bridge that gap. So it helps us move from something that's uncomfortable to something now that becomes familiar. So a couple things happen with the transcript. One is I can skim through a conversation much faster than I can listen to it, because just reading the context of the conversation goes very quickly, and versus listening to it. And there are long pauses sometimes in conversations, and transcripts eliminate all of that. So I can get through that part very quickly, but I can look through it. And now it's like reading an email or a story instead of actually listening to myself talk. So it is a good way to communicate. And then as we get more into the rhythm, the transcript is useful because this now becomes just a point in time. So the reviewer, which might be the owner or the manager, identifies this conversation, kicks it out to the service advisor, says, hey, there was an issue XYZ on this call. Issue in terms of how it was handled, not necessarily like a customer issue, but listen, read through this and let me know what part of our process you may have eliminated or shied away from, that type of thing. So the transcript is powerful in that regard.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've seen your dashboard where it shows the amount of time the caller was speaking and the amount of time the service advisor was speaking. What are coaches saying about that? Is there a percentage that they want to see?
Yes. So I think coaches have different perspectives on it, as you could imagine.
Sure.
But the interesting metric is looking at who's talking and when. And that's the part that you're referring to, right? The overall talk time, say a conversation lasted for 2 minutes. Well, how much of that time was actually talk time by the service advisor? How much of that was talk time by the customer? I like to see about a 60% in favor of the service advisor total talk time. It's not hard and fast, but if we start to get less than 60, now we begin to want to look at who's in control of the conversation, who is actually taking ownership or control of this conversation. If we start to get too much more than, say, 80% talk time by the service advisor, these could be good indicators that we're getting into an area that we don't have to talk about on the phone, like diagnosis, right? And diagnosing over the phone is a big problem. So if the service advisor is carrying on too much, are we allowing the customer to communicate and feel heard? Or are we getting into an area that we don't want to talk about? So too much talk time is a good indicator of something we want to investigate in that conversation. Too little talk time by the advisor is another indicator that might demonstrate that we have loss of control.
Yeah. Okay. Ask for a sale, ask for an appointment.
Mm-hmm.
Way back in the day, I remember going to all kinds of great training in the 5 steps of a sale. And one of them, of course, was to ask for the order. And that ask for the order can happen at any time in the relationship. You don't have to jump from do it with step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could go from step 1 in a greeting to closing the sale
Right.
in 30 seconds if it worked and if it was right, because that's what they came for. Are you looking for ask for the sale, ask for the reservation?
Every time when the conversation is there's a problem with the customer's vehicle, every time we want to look for the ask. So, and you would be surprised, Carmen, maybe you wouldn't be, but you'd be surprised on how many times a customer will call our shop and tell us they've got a problem with their vehicle, and we don't even ask them to come in and see us. It is
Oh, we're the sounding board. Oh, we're Aunt
right,
Mary. Oh,
yeah,
it's too bad you have a problem. Okay.
right.
And are we waiting for them to say, "Well, will you look at it?" We're waiting for them, huh?
It seems that way. So it kind of baffles my mind when somebody says, "Hey, I've got a problem with XYZ in my car," and then there's nothing, right? So, hey, instead of I can help you with that, when would you like to come and see me? And even offering them some time options to come down and see you. This gets into the saying yes to the customer part, right? And we want to ask them to come and see us. And if they say they've got a problem, can you help me? Well, yes. Not to move away from the question you asked about asking for the appointment, but we hear the term say yes all the time in our industry. Say yes to the customer. Saying yes doesn't
Right.
happen a lot, but
Yeah.
I think the fear is that saying yes means that I'm implying I'm going to see you today, and that isn't true. Saying yes doesn't have to be that I'm going to see you today. It could, and it'd be ideal if we could tell the customer, how about now? Right? Is now a good time for you? Well, perfect. We may not be able to do that, but saying yes is just the opposite of saying no. Again, so many times we hear the first thing out of the service advisor's mouth is telling the customer what they can't do, which is I can't see you until XYZ date, or I can't see you. I don't have any appointments available until, or just simply no. Shifting that mindset to yes is super important, and helping the advisor know that saying yes is not meaning that I've got to see you today. We might have to get them in tomorrow, or we might have to get them in on Monday, but we're going to offer them that option, and we're going to ask them to come to see us.
It reminds me of just the simple, "Is Friday okay with you? Can you bring the car in?" And you start taking in charge and picking the
Mhm.
dates and the times, and if they're not good, but the individual takes that as a lead, then they're gonna give you the time that works for them. One of the I'm big into a language shift in the industry, big into a language shift, and one of them is to go from service advisor to client advocate.
Oh, nice.
And so my thought is if I'm an advisor, I'm not necessarily asking for an order. I'm just advising. But if I was an advocate and I had that crown on my shoulder, the epaulets on my shoulder, that I'm your advocate, then I'm going to do everything I can to help you solve your problem. And that, to the point, would be bring it in.
I love that. I love that term. I'm all of a sudden a fan of client advocate or customer advocate.
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier my wife came out of healthcare, and advocacy in that
Oh, sure.
industry is huge. If somebody doesn't have an advocate in the medical industry, they're fending for themselves. And the parallel is certainly appropriate in the automotive industry, because somebody that doesn't know vehicles is uncomfortable. They're afraid anyways to call, because somewhere in the back of their mind they're thinking this is going to cost me hundreds or thousands of dollars.
Sure.
If they begin to recognize immediately they've got an advocate, I love where you're going with that, Carmen. Let me support you in it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So, coaches, I'm an inbound. I've got it, my dashboard, and I want to go to the next level. I'm recognizing that I may not be the person to take our counter where it needs to get.
Hmm.
And as the leader of the business, the owner of the business, my job is to have people that work with and for me. You know, who's your recruiter? Who's your coach? Who's your expert? Who's your service advisor trainer? I mean, we need to have these people in the cadre of helping us run our business. Coaches, can they gain access to this? Do a lot of the coaches, when they look at your dashboard, just say, oh my God, you've made my life so much easier?
All of that, they can get access. They love it. And I'll tell you the number one thing, and that really the reason that Inbound put the time, effort, and energy into developing something was because of the really recognizing the number one reason why people don't do call coaching is the heavy lift of time. It takes an eternity to go through call after call after call just to identify real usable, teachable moments, right? Where we can continue to educate and drive the consistency around that process. So the time factor is the same for a professional call coach. And there are many, many great call coaches, and I work with many of them across the industry. They love the platform because they can simply log in and it's a multiplier of their time. So where an owner may only be able to, hire somebody as a call coach to work with one of their service advisors because of the coach's time, now with this type of a platform, they're able to actually use this to service both of their advisors, because it really qualifies, it narrows down, and it becomes a multiplication tool. So the time, if I have 30 minutes to invest, I can use that effectively. It's not a big barrier to even sitting down as an owner or coach to do the initial work to identify the calls that we're going to use for training purposes.
It sounds like an MRI on your counter.
Yeah. Do we need to lay
or,
down in the little tube for it?
or a CT scan on
Right?
my counter. Those are the miraculous devices that look
Yeah.
inside and to find blockages and to find problems and to
Y-
say, oh, I now know why it hurts over here.
I'm going to take all these notes here because you're giving me all kinds of ideas about
Oh,
these analogies
uh,
you have. So,
that's me. My brain just can't stop when I'm starting to talk to people about, and so the next thought that I have here, let your people have access to this.
mhm.
And I'm sure every owner says, look, here's your sign on, here's your stuff. Would you do me a favor? Tomorrow morning, get in 15 minutes early, look at some of the calls that, we're gonna kind of summarize a few things that we think you should look at. Go back, look at the transcript, listen, and do me a favor. Come back to me. Tell me what you learned from that last call that we showed you. What a powerful lesson in self-improvement.
It is. It's a great lesson in self-improvement. It drives accountability. It's rooted in consistency. And from an owner or coach's perspective, they begin to change or affect the way that the service advisor operates to a certain extent, because at some level it begins to leave this sense of, is this the next call that we're going to be listening to? And as I'm on the call or as I'm answering the phone, I will have that moment of pause. So you'd mentioned earlier, I might have an off day, or I might have just dealt with an issue that
Yeah.
really rubbed me as an advisor. And that happens, right? We deal with tough situations every day. Being on the front line of the shop is hard work.
Oh, it is.
And what we don't take a moment as an advisor necessarily, or a manager, or even an owner, when we pick up that phone, we don't necessarily take that moment of pause to say, now how am I going to project myself to this person who may be calling my business for the first time? I have maybe 15 or 20 seconds to establish that first impression that will set the tone of my relationship for a very long time. It will begin to make the determination of how is this visit going to go. It will begin to make, the customer will begin to make conclusions about after this visit, is there going to be a second visit and a third visit? How long is my relationship going to be with the shop? And believe it or not, much of that tone is set in the first 15 to 20 seconds of that first phone call ever.
Sure.
So this is important. We have to have that moment of pause. And when we begin to instill this behavior, because of the consistency of the review process, now we're going to drive change in the way that we, hello, thank you for
Yeah,
calling,
I
right?
got you.
I'm going to take
That
this moment.
Yeah, some people say they put, a mirror in front of them so that they could, look and see the smile. And when you
Yeah,
do that and you say to yourself consistently, you're always going to look at the mirror first, and there's the breath and there's the pause
right.
before you click the button. Uh, Percentage of sales growth, I can't help but think, wow, you talk about, I may not have to spend any more money on ads, Google ads or Facebook or something like that. Wouldn't it be the coolest thing is to pull back not 100% of your marketing spend on the outside face of the customer in social media, pull back a little bit, turn on this discipline, let me use that word, and watch your sales growth because of the elixir
Mm-hmm.
that this kind of dashboard, the AI listening evaluation could bring to the business. Within a week or two, that you could have an immense amount of appointments and sales growth and built relationships.
You're absolutely on the right track. And the cost of doing something like this is nominal because it affects a number of things. One is that appointment conversion rate. So imagine if you understood what your appointment conversion rate was today. Imagine if you understood that as an owner. That's super important. And maybe you go from 35 to 40%. If you add 5% to the number of people who call that set an appointment, that could be 5 or 50. It depends on the size of your organization. And then just multiply that by your ARO. And then
Yeah.
imagine that your ARO goes up because the overall customer experience is improved, and that your sales process is more dialed in and your ARO goes up. So you see where this begins to go. It further underscores the importance of this continuing education process, Carm.
That's a whoops. Whoops.
Whoops,
Look at
yeah.
this. All of a sudden, yeah, I got more people, I got more car count, I've got more ARO. The ROI on this is not hard to figure out.
Right. That was a lot of three-letter acronyms, by the way. Or
Oh,
TLAs, right?
yeah.
So sorry.
I'm sorry I'm using all these acronyms, and you know
No,
me,
it's great. This
I
is
I
this is
like them
our
and
industry.
I like them and I don't, yeah. So you gotta have a VIOP, voice VOI, VoIP phone system in order for this to work. And do you do a lot of the work back at your server?
We do. So, Inbound is a phone company. And I know my intention here is not to be a commercial, but we have the Insights platform that is part of our service. We can also operate independent of the phone service by passing calls through. A lot of companies are doing something similar like that today with call tracking numbers and so forth. So we can pass calls
Right.
through our AI platform or be the phone provider, and then it's part of. So there are a number of ways to do it. And I think, a digital phone solution is important. There are a lot of components that go along with the digital communication platform that help the overall process. And as we look at, the call recording and the review, and that's just part of it. That's one piece of it. And then when we look at really, going to the next level and supersizing our communication platform, managing, anticipating the customer's needs, both during business hours and after business hours, it's really very useful for owners to at least consider having a full, fully capable digital communication platform.
It's so neat. I remember being at Vision one year and we're coming home. There's a big snowstorm. I believe it was probably a Sunday. The shop was open and people were taking phone calls from customers in the airport
Right. That's
because
part of it,
they
right?
because they signed on to their phone system and said, send the calls here.
Hmm.
to me and my people. It was fascinating to see. I mean, that's been around for years to be able to do this.
Right.
But I think a lot of small business owners didn't realize that they had the power in their hands to do that now.
Well, and imagine the business continuity. There's another, would you call it a $50 word or something like that?
There it is. Yeah.
Business continuity becomes important. So having those types of tools available so that if a car runs into the box out on the corner and it knocks out a bunch of stuff, how do I continue to communicate with my customers? How do my
Right.
customers reach me? And if my communication provider has thought about this and provided an automated solution, it's the cool factor where I can take the customer call or call my customer from the airport, but it's also the business continuity plan that says, hey, when we have an unforeseen issue arise, we also have the ability to be completely transparent for our customers, that they can call us and we can call them, and we're still maintaining our business communication.
Wow. This was so interesting. I'm like a kid in a candy store listening to you. I don't know. Should I eat the Hershey bar, the Snickers? What should I have? And I find this fascinating. You need to come back one day, and we need to get into this maybe a little deeper. Maybe show a picture of what that dashboard looks like, and maybe you could walk us through that. And again, it's about saying that the technology exists today for you to get this level of in-depth summary, review, analysis, all those $50 words we've been talking about, because it's just one additional area. I mean, I could go and learn to be a better leader. I can get a great accountant to work for me. Got a marketing company, got a recruiting company. Where is my communications slash advisor, the analysis that go, it's like, how good are we in the back shop?
Right.
What kind of continuous training are we doing in education for our techs? Well, a lot of that comes back in comeback analysis and, satisfied customers, solving the problem right the first time. I don't think we've thought that deep about our counters until now.
It's all part of it. It really is. So all of these pieces add up together, and it's a very important part. Training on the front counter, something just as simple as the phone, right? Anybody can do phone service, right? But not anybody can do the phone service in a way that's meaningful for the business owner
Yeah.
and meaningful for the development activities that are necessary to go to the next level and meet our customers' needs.
I found this fascinating. I love technology and how it can apply to the human aspect of our relationships. Tell me what I'm doing good as a human being. How am I communicating? Am I getting my message across? Am I a good listener? Am I
Mhm.
solving problems? And it all comes from listening to the dialogue that we have. I guess if somebody was, oh, wow, can you imagine recording everything I do with my significant other in my personal relationship, sending it up to the cloud and having it come back and says, "You really screwed up that time, Carm."
You bring up an interesting point. Can I expand on one
Sure,
ditch? Uh,
sure.
so I talk with owners all the time, and they're like, "Okay, I'm listening to calls now, and I want to choke some people. This is a problem." So it's important as an owner to establish your expectation of what's happening. Have a process. Make sure that your service advisors know how you want them to answer the phone, but be careful about you know when we sit down, we should have a meeting. We shouldn't have a beating, and this is the important distinction. So
Yeah,
emotional overtones can really hamper this process.
sure.
So at the onset, we talked about what's uncomfortable for the service advisor. It's uncomfortable to hear themselves talk on a recording. It just is. The other thing is, I'm in trouble. I'm going to get yelled at. All of these things that are going through their mind. So when that actually happens, if the coach starts laying in on them, that can be uncomfortable. If the owner, if there's again that kind of emotional overtone, that can really be stifling, and that is a ditch. So we need to be aware of it and cautious to not. And hey, you might listen to a call. You own the shop. You might listen to the call and be upset, and maybe you should be, but give it some time. and don't react. Make sure that you process that and then sit down and make it a training opportunity instead of a beating.
Thank you so much for concluding with that. Find the positivity in every piece of negativity. I mean, you're not going to let me be better if you're pounding the crap out of me. I mean,
Right.
that's your point.
That's my point.
Yeah, and in fact, allow me to find the bad so that I could create the good, because you're not going to force me to create the good if I don't realize it's there. So, yeah,
Perfect.
go listen to these dozen calls. Get back, like I said, go listen to one of these things and let me know what you think. And if after the person's listened to 12 of these things, and they say, "Oh, things are fine," okay, now we have to have a real serious meeting about what defines fine.
Right. Right.
What defines oh, anyway, this has been a blast in every way possible. David Boyd, callinbound.com. Good stuff. Come back. Thank you for your partnership on the podcast, and we sure appreciate how hard you're working to make us all better.
It's great, Carm. Thanks for having me here today.
Thanks, man. Yeah.